To understand the magnitude of the earthquake that is about to hit the automotive industry, we must first understand the ground upon which it stands. For over 70 years, the global pickup truck market has not been driven by logic, but by theology. In the vast red dust expanses of the Australian outback, in the muddy, rain-soaked construction sites of Birmingham, and across the agricultural heartlands of South Africa, the diesel engine is worshipped with a fervor usually reserved for ancient deities. The Toyota Hilux, the Ford Ranger, the Isuzu D-Max, and the Mitsubishi Triton. These are not merely machines composed of steel, rubber, and glass. They are cultural monuments. They are members of the family. They are the tools that built our cities, farmed our lands, and mined our resources. We have been conditioned, through decades of marketing and lived experience, to believe that toughness has a specific sound, the clatter of a diesel compression ignition. We have been taught that reliability feels a certain way. A heavy clutch, a vibrating gear stick, and a suspension setup that communicates every pebble on the road directly to your spine. We accepted these flaws as the necessary price of admission. We accepted that a 0 to 100 time of 12 seconds was fast enough because we told ourselves it's a truck, not a sports car. We accepted that burning 14 liters of diesel to tow a caravan was simply the cost of freedom. We accepted that an empty leaf spring suspension would skip across the road like a frightened stone. This psychological conditioning has been so effective that the legacy manufacturers, Toyota, Ford, Nissan, stopped innovating. Why change the recipe when the customers are addicted to the taste? They became lazy. They gave us new LED headlights, slightly larger infotainment screens, and heated leather seats. But underneath the cosmetic surgery, the chassis technology has remained stagnant since the late 1980s. They became comfortable in their monopoly. They became arrogant. And in the brutal history of technology, arrogance is the precursor to extinction. They failed to see that the world was changing. Learned when BYD, Build Your Dreams, first announced the Shark pickup truck. The automotive world held its breath. Here was a technology titan, a company that builds everything from the microchips in your phone to the massive battery banks that power cities, entering the sacred ground of the workhorse. On paper, the first-generation Shark was a marvel of modern engineering. It featured the revolutionary DMO Super Hybrid Platform, 430 horsepower, and a level of digital integration that made a Ford Ranger Raptor look like a steam engine. It was poised to be the assassin that took down the Toyota empire overnight. But when it landed, it stumbled. It didn't trip on technology. It tripped on culture. It stumbled on a single, critical number that defines utility and masculinity in the truck world: braked towing capacity. The engineers in Shenzhen, perhaps focused too intensely on efficiency and aerodynamic drag, equipped the first Shark with a 1.5-liter turbo engine as its generator. For a commuter SUV, this was brilliant. But for a heavy hauler, it was mathematically and physically insufficient. The towing rating was capped at 2,500 kilograms. In the Australian and UK markets, where towing 3.5 tons is a non-negotiable requirement for serious work, be it hauling a mini excavator, a horse float, or a massive caravan, this was a death sentence. It didn't matter how fast it was. It didn't matter how comfortable it was. If it couldn't tow the big rig, it was useless. The media tore it apart. The tradies laughed and dismissed it as a lifestyle toy for surfers and city dwellers. Toyota executives slept soundly, clinking their champagne glasses, convinced that the Chinese challenger didn't understand the real world of heavy lifting. They thought the threat was neutralized. But they failed to understand the fundamental nature of BYD. Unlike legacy brands that wait 7 to 10 years to fix a mistake in a model update, BYD iterates like a software company. They listen to the insults, they analyze the telemetry data, and they prepared a counterstrike that is terrifying in its speed and scale. We have now received undeniable confirmation from supply chain leaks, regulatory filings with the Chinese Ministry of Industry, and high-level industry insiders that the Shark is undergoing a massive structural powertrain evolution for the 2026 model year. The 1.5-liter heart is being ripped out. In its place, BYD is installing a high-performance 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. To the uninitiated, an increase of 500 seals might not seem like a revolution, but in the physics of an extended-range electric vehicle, EREV architecture, this changes the laws of thermodynamics entirely. You see, the engine in the Shark does not drive the wheels directly most of the time. It is a dedicated power plant. Its sole job is to turn a generator to create electricity. The limitation of the old 1.5-liter unit was not that it couldn't move the car, but that it couldn't generate electricity fast enough to sustain the battery levels while towing a massive load up a hill. Imagine towing 3.5 tons up a steep mountain pass at 100 kilometers per hour. The massive electric motors are consuming energy voraciously, draining the battery buffer in minutes. The old engine had to scream at maximum RPM just to keep up, generating excess heat and stress. And eventually, the system would throttle power. The new 2.0-liter engine changes the equation. By having a larger displacement, it can sit in its thermal sweet spot, the specific RPM range where the Miller cycle combustion process is most efficient. The Miller cycle differs from the traditional Otto cycle by keeping the intake valve open longer during the compression stroke, reducing the energy needed to compress the air-fuel mixture. This allows the engine to extract more energy from every drop of fuel. This new generator acts like a fusion reactor, pouring electrons into the battery faster than the motors can drain them, even under extreme load. This unlocks the Holy Grail, a certified, robust 3,500 kilograms braked towing capacity. With this update, the Shark matches the Ford Ranger V6 and the Toyota Hilux spec for spec, but does so with nearly 500 horsepower and the instant torque response that only electric motors can provide. Let's talk about the physics of towing with electricity versus diesel, because this is where the old guard gets left behind. A diesel engine has a narrow power band. You have to wait for the turbo to spool, and the gearbox has to hunt for the right ratio. When you are on a slippery boat ramp, that lag can be dangerous. The Shark's electric motors provide maximum torque from 0 RPM. There is no lag. There is no gear hunting. The electric control system adjusts traction millisecond by millisecond. It is smoother, safer, and infinitely more controlled. The critics who said, "Batteries can't tow," are about to be silenced by the sheer brute force of physics. To truly appreciate why the Shark rides better than a luxury SUV but hauls like a tractor, we need to perform a deep dive into the DMO, Dual Mode Off-Road platform. This is the secret sauce that Ford and Toyota simply cannot copy without bankrupting themselves. Traditional trucks use a ladder frame chassis that is separate from the body. It consists of 2 steel rails running down the length of the truck. It is technology that dates back to the Model T Ford. It is good for raw strength, but it is terrible for rigidity. Under heavy cornering or uneven terrain, a ladder frame twists and flexes like a wet noodle. This flexing is why traditional trucks handle so poorly. The suspension cannot do its job if the frame it is bolted to is moving. BYD has implemented CTC, cell-to-chassis, technology. They take the massive blade battery pack, which is essentially a block of armored aluminum and lithium iron phosphate, and weld it directly into the steel frame rails. This transforms the battery from a heavy burden into a structural spine. The torsional rigidity of the Shark, measured in Newton meters per degree of twist, is nearly double that of a standard pickup truck. This massive increase in stiffness allowed engineers to do the unthinkable. They deleted the solid rear axle. For 50 years, the solid rear axle with leaf springs has been the standard for trucks. It is durable, but it rides terribly. BYD replaced it with independent double wishbone suspension. In the past, you couldn't put independent suspension on a heavy hauler because the chassis would flex too much, throwing the suspension geometry out of alignment and causing rapid tire wear. With the CTC reinforced frame, the Shark is stiff enough to handle the load. This allows for soft, compliant suspension geometry that swallows potholes like a Rolls-Royce, yet remains stiff enough to carry a ton in the tray. And let's not forget the virtual differential locks. In a mechanical system, locking a differential takes time. Gears must mesh, levers must be pulled. The Shark uses software because there is no physical connection between the front and rear axles. The front is powered by one motor, the rear by another. The computer controls the torque split. The system samples the road surface 1,000 times per second. If the front left wheel hits a patch of ice, the system can cut power to that wheel and send 100% of the torque to the rear right wheel in less than 20 milliseconds. That is faster than the human nervous system can process a thought. While a Ford Ranger Raptor is still waiting for its turbos to spool up and its clutch packs to engage, the Shark has already calculated the friction coefficient of the mud, adjusted the torque vectoring, and launched the truck forward. It makes mechanical off-roading look like Stone Age technology. One of the most persistent myths used by the anti-EV crowd is the danger of batteries. What if I hit a rock in the bush? What if the battery gets punctured? Will I burn to death? These are valid questions if you are talking about the NCM, nickel, cobalt, manganese, batteries found in Teslas or Fords. NCM chemistry is energy-dense but volatile. If you puncture it, it releases oxygen, creating its own fuel for a fire that cannot be extinguished. BYD does not use NCM. They use LFP, lithium iron phosphate, in their blade battery. The chemistry of LFP is fundamentally different. The phosphate bond is incredibly strong. It does not release oxygen when heated or punctured. BYD famously demonstrates this with the nail penetration test. They take a fully charged blade battery cell and drive a steel spike through it. In a standard battery, this causes an instant explosion. In the blade battery, nothing happens. The surface temperature barely rises above 60 degrees Celsius. It doesn't smoke. It doesn't catch fire. You could literally drive this truck over a spike strip, puncture the battery pack, and not only would you survive, but the truck probably wouldn't even catch fire. For the bush mechanic, for the farmer, for the soldier, this durability is paramount. It is the only battery technology tough enough to survive the abuse that a Hilux owner dishes out. Furthermore, LFP batteries have a cycle life of over 3,000 to 5,000 cycles before they degrade significantly. That is millions of kilometers of driving. The engine will die long before the battery does. This destroys the argument that you'll have to replace the battery in 5 years. Now, let's put away the engineering manuals and take out the calculator. Because ultimately, businesses do not buy trucks based on 0, 100 times. They buy them based on spreadsheets. Let's construct a realistic scenario. Meet Dave. Dave is a builder in Sydney or a contractor in London. Dave drives a Ford Ranger V6 diesel. He drives 30,000 kilometers a year. In city traffic, idling on job sites, and towing his trailer, his Ranger averages 12 to 14 liters of diesel per 100 kilometers. With global diesel prices rising, carbon taxes looming, and service costs increasing, Dave is spending nearly $7,000 a year just on fuel. Over a 5-year ownership cycle, considering inflation, he burns roughly $35,000 to $40,000 in liquid dinosaurs. That is money that vanishes into thin air. Now, look at the Shark. With a pure electric range of 100 kilometers, Dave can do 90% of his daily driving without the petrol engine ever turning on. He charges at home overnight using off-peak electricity or his solar panels. His cost per kilometer drops from 25 cents to 4 cents. Even when he does long trips and uses the hybrid mode, the thermal efficiency of the 2.0-liter Miller cycle engine means he is getting 7 or 8 liters per 100 kilometers combined. Over 5 years, the fuel savings alone are enough to buy a small car or pay for a significant portion of the truck's depreciation. And that's before we talk about maintenance. The Shark has no alternator, no starter motor, no accessory belts, no complex 10-speed transmission fluid to change, no DPF, diesel particulate filter, to clog up. Brake pads last 100,000 kilometers because the regenerative braking does 90% of the stopping work. The total cost of ownership gap is so wide that buying a diesel truck in 2026 is practically an act of financial negligence. Fleet managers know this. Once they run the numbers on the Shark 2.0T, the migration will not be a trickle, it will be a flood. But the Shark offers one more feature that changes the game entirely. Something no diesel truck can ever do without aftermarket modification. V2L, vehicle to load. The Shark is essentially a 30 kW mobile power station on wheels. In the tray, you have high voltage power outlets capable of delivering 6 kilowatts of energy. This is not a gimmick to charge a laptop. This is industrial-grade power. Let's look at the real-world use cases that change a worker's life. A carpenter arrives at a new housing development where the mains power hasn't been connected yet. Normally, he would have to drag a noisy, heavy, petrol-powered Honda generator out of the tray, fill it with fuel, and pull the cord until his shoulder hurts. With the Shark, he simply plugs his table saw, his drop saw, and his battery chargers directly into the truck. The truck runs silently. A camper sets up in the middle of the remote wilderness. He runs an induction cooktop to make dinner, a heater to keep the tent warm, and floodlights to see the area all night long, drawing from the massive battery pack. If the battery gets low, the engine quietly turns on for 15 minutes to top it up, then shuts off. A disaster relief worker can power a field hospital, a Starlink communication terminal, or a water pump during a blackout. The truck ceases to be just a transport vessel. It becomes a piece of critical infrastructure. It becomes a tool. Trying to compete with this versatility using a Toyota Hilux is like trying to compete with a smartphone using a carrier pigeon. We are standing at a precipice of history. In business schools around the world, they teach a case study called the Kodak moment. Kodak invented the digital camera, but they refused to release it because they were afraid it would kill their profitable film business. They clung to the past while the future ran them over. Toyota, Ford, and Isuzu are currently living their Kodak moment. They are clinging to the diesel engine, refining it, polishing it, adding more gears to it, pretending that it is still the pinnacle of technology. But the BYD Shark 2.0T exposes the lie. It proves that you do not need to sacrifice power for efficiency. It proves that you do not need to sacrifice comfort for capability. It proves that the future of the pickup truck is not louder. It is smarter. The arrival of the 3.5-ton towing capacity with the 2.0T engine was the final nail in the coffin. The barrier to entry is gone. The excuses are gone. If you are a die-hard diesel fan, I respect your loyalty. You love the sound. You love the smell. You love the history. But loyalty to an obsolete technology is just stubbornness. The Shark is in the water. The blood is spreading. And the reign of the diesel dinosaurs is officially over. The question is no longer if you will switch to a hybrid truck, but when. I'm Elson from Drive and RPM. If you want to stay on the right side of history and understand the machines that are building the future, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Let me know in the comments below. Are you ready to trust a Chinese hybrid monster to tow your livelihood? Or will you go down with the diesel ship? See you in the next deep dive.